Hello and welcome to Pueblo Library's Spectacular Science. This is Paula at the Jidon Library and you are watching Fun with Dirt. Today, Annie Montez from the University of New Mexico will tell us a bit about the properties and function of soil, or what we usually call dirt. And then she'll lead us through a few activities with using soil. If you picked up one of these kits, then it contains items that you can use for these activities. And if you haven't yet, you can still pick up a kit, and it has the instructions for these activities on it at any of the Pueblo Library branches. So, on with the show. Let me get Annie on the screen.
Hello, my name is Annie Montez. I am an ecologist and a botanist, and today we are going to learn about soils. What makes up a soil? Well, soil scientists like to divide soils into live parts and non-living parts. So live parts include things like fungi, bacteria, and soil-dwelling arthropods or bugs like these. So on the bottom of the soil, we have things like grubs and larvae. On the surface of the soil, there are things like ants and beetles that interact with the soil as they enact their life cycles. So the live parts of soil include, again, fungi, bacteria, and various types of insects. The dead parts of soil are what we classically think of. So like sand particles, clay particles, things like that. And today we are going to go over some characteristics of soil. We're going to talk about soil color, soil texture, and pH. These characteristics are important because they allow soil scientists to identify soil type. So for example, a clayey soil might be really red, whereas a very sandy soil can be beige. So the color is telling us something about what is making up the soil. pH is how acidic or basic something is. So for example, a lemon is really acidic. Why might scientists care about these characteristics? Well, we can use this type of information for things like plant propagation, so like growing plants in a greenhouse, research, land health assessments, so we want to make sure we keep our agricultural lands nice and healthy, and conservation and restoration. So these characteristics of soil let scientists determine if they're the proper type of soil depending on the need. All right, let's paint with soil. So the supplies that you will need to paint with soil, most importantly, you will need some soil. You can get this from your backyard or hiking or whatever suits your fancy. You'll also need a paintbrush or paintbrushes, a blank piece of paper, water, and various containers to mix your soil paint in. And finally, an optional supply is a cup of water to rinse off your paintbrush in between your paint types. Okay, so I've filled my containers with soil. And now we are going to slowly add water to each container until it is a paint-like consistency. So I'll start by adding a little bit of water and stirring. A little bit more water and stirring. until we get a good texture. So this is pretty good, a little watery, but that's okay. So this is a good consistency, pretty watery. You want it to be a lot like paint. And then you will repeat this for all of your colors, or if you just have one color, you can go ahead and start painting. All right, now that we've mixed our soil to a painty consistency, we can go ahead and make our picture. So, just treat it like regular paint, like so. And I'm gonna make a flower, since I'm a botanist. And you can just add in the different colors if you have them. So that's a little bit of a lighter brown there. And then you can let your piece of art air dry, and it's much like watercolor, so it will stick to the paper. And there you have it, a lovely soil painting. All right, we are going to texture some soil now. So the supplies that you will need: a spray bottle full of water, your bag of soil or soils, and finally, this handy dandy soil texturing flow chart, which we will go through together. Okay, so you're gonna wanna take about a tablespoon or so, like a handful of your soil. And what you're gonna do is you're first gonna squish it in your hand to see if it forms a ball. See, so mine still kind of falls apart, which tells me I need to add water. So we're gonna add the water slowly until the soil is the texture of Play-Doh. And if you lose a bunch of soil, you can just add a little bit more into your hand, working that soil and spraying, working it like Play-Doh until we get a nice ball of dough. All right, so this is pretty good. The form is sticking together. It's not dripping, it's not too wet. So now we're ready. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna squish your little dough ball between your index finger and your thumb. So you'll be pushing up between your finger and your thumb, the ribbon. And the length of your ribbon will determine what type of soil you have. So, got my dough ball, and I'm just gonna gently squish it between my finger and my thumb, forming a soil ribbon until it breaks off. Oh, it broke off there pretty soon. You can keep going too if you want to see if it breaks off. Looks like it broke off again. So it looks like mine's pretty crumbly. So if we look at our soil flow chart, does the soil form a ribbon? Yes, it does form a ribbon. Does the soil make a weak ribbon less than 1 inch long before breaking? Yes. All right, now the next step is to take a small little bit of soil in the palm of your hand. And you're gonna spray this until a little puddle forms in your hand. And you're gonna rub. And you're gonna feel with your index finger, does it feel soft? Does it feel gritty? Does it feel very gritty? And in my case, it does not feel very gritty. So the answer would be no. It feels very smooth. So this is a silt loam soil. Okay, so let's texture another sample here. Again, you want to start with a handful of soil, or roughly 1 tablespoon. And we're going to slowly add water to it with our spray bottle until we get a Play-Doh consistency. So I'm adding some water, rolling that soil sample around in my hand. This one's a lot wetter than the last one, so I think I'm gonna probably need less. That's why it's important to slowly add the water, because the soil might be really dry or really wet. All right, so I got my little Play-Doh ball here. It's pretty squishy, just like Play-Doh. And again, we're gonna squish this soil dough ball between our index finger and our thumb, doing this kind of a motion. Right, so I have my sample between my index finger and my thumb. I'm working that dough ball, and I'm just gonna start pushing it and see how long I can make it. So, oh, looks like it broke off at about a little over 1 inch. I'm gonna do it again just to make sure, just like last time. So I'm squishing it between my index finger and my thumb, making a soil ribbon. And it looks like it's getting a little taller before it breaks off that time. So it looks like maybe 1.5 inches. So looking at our flow chart, was I able to form a ribbon? Yes. Does the soil make a weak ribbon less than 1 inch long? No. Does the soil make a medium ribbon 1 to 2 inches long before breaking? Yes. All right, now just like before, I'm gonna take a tiny bit of soil in the center of my palm, and I'm gonna wet it until there's a little puddle in my palm. And then I'm gonna take my other finger and I'm gonna rub that around, and I'm gonna ask myself, does it feel gritty? And just like the last sample, no, it doesn't feel gritty. Does the soil feel very smooth? Yes, it does feel very smooth. So we have a silty clay loam here. And that's how you make a soil ribbon to texture. Let's test for pH. So again, pH is how acidic or basic something is. So a great example of something that's very acidic is lemons. Okay, so the supplies that we will need: baking soda, vinegar, white vinegar works best, water, a measuring cup. I'm using a 1/2 cup measuring. Containers to mix your soil, your water, your vinegar, and your baking soda. And of course, your soil sample. So the first thing you're gonna do to test the pH of your soil is you're gonna take a 1/2 cup of your sample and you're gonna put it in 2 different containers. Right, and then in the first container, you're gonna take your vinegar and you're gonna add it to the soil, but you're gonna wanna observe what happens. So what you're looking for is bubbles. If bubbles form, then that means you have a basic soil, which means you have a pH of 7 to 8. So we're gonna watch this. We're gonna see if it bubbles. Oh, it looks like there is some bubbling here. But I want to make sure that the bubbling isn't just because of me swirling. So we're going to go ahead and do the second test as well. So in the second container here, we are going to add water. Make sure to rinse off your cup in between because you don't want to get vinegar in there. So first we add water, half a cup. Mix that around a little bit. You can use your fingers or whatever, a spoon. Once your soil and your water is well mixed, then you're gonna add a half a cup of baking soda. So, I'm gonna dry off my measuring cup. I'm gonna fill it all the way with baking soda. Okay, now we're gonna add this baking soda to this mixture and we're gonna look for bubbles again. So yeah, it looks a little bit of bubbly still, so let's see what happens. So it looks like we're not really getting any bubbles, which makes me think that either we have a slightly basic one, since we did see those little bit of bubbles, and actually if we look at this now, you can kind of still see dried bubbles on the surface. Oh yeah, those are really fluffy little foamy bubbles. So this tells me that this is an alkaline or a basic soil, and that means that this soil has a pH of 7 to 8. Okay, so we have a second soil sample here that we're going to test for pH. Hopefully this one will be a little bit more exciting. So I have in each of my containers a half a cup of soil from my backyard. And I'm going to start with the first container by adding a half a cup of vinegar and watching for bubbles. If the soil bubbles in the vinegar, then you have a basic soil, which is a pH of 7 to 8. All right, here we go. Okay, so we got some bubbles there. All right, yeah, you can actually see this one bubbling. Bubbles are forming on the surface there in the soil. So this is likely an alkaline soil. It's actually getting really bubbly now. But again, let's just make sure. And we're gonna test our other container with the baking soda. So I'm wiping all the vinegar away from this. So first, we add a cup of water. Mix the soil. Right, see, we got the soil mixed. And now we are gonna add, again, drying off my cup here. We're gonna add a half a cup of baking soda and watch for bubbles. If this container bubbles, then that means we have an acidic soil, so acidic like a lemon. Okay, and if nothing happens, then that means this one's pretty much neutral too. Okay, so getting my baking soda, and we're gonna add it to here, and we're gonna watch for bubbling. So, I didn't get any bubbles from that, which tells me that we have an alkaline soil or a basic soil, and in fact, If we go back to the original container, it's actually still making new bubbles. So this tells me that the pH isn't neutral. In fact, you can hear it sizzling. This is an alkaline or a basic soil. And that is how you test soil pH at home.
Well, thank you for joining today. Remember that this will be up on Facebook, so in case you need to watch it again for all those instructions
we are
on the
going to learn
activities,
about
but also the
soils.
kit has the
What
instructions
makes up a
too.
soil?
And then
Well,
next week,
soil
our program will
scientists
be
like to
video
divide
game
soils into
animals.
live parts
And you can start picking
and
up that kit
non-living
on
parts.
Monday. And now,
So live
go
parts
play in the mud.
include things like fungi, bacteria, and